Okay, there actually is one more thing I want to talk about before we move to the next topic, and that is, what if the user doesn't have JavaScript? Some users really don't. It's not very common these days, but it does happen. In that case, you might want to tell a user, hey, the site doesn't work for you because we have a lot of JavaScript in it. The way you do that, if you've noticed in our course, I already put here on the top, the site needs you to have JavaScript, please enable it. I could, instead of that, in that area where I have that, basically bound it with the tag NoScript. And if I bound it with the tag NoScript, it will only be visible if the user has no script. So I'm going to just bound that. And I'm going to save. And in this scenario, if I go back into my application and, oh, it looks like it's still saving, so I'm going to give it a second here. So let's see what happens. So if I go back into my browser and I click on refresh, notice this line of copy, if it stays or it goes away, and you'll see that this needs to just disappears. Now, if you're working with Firefox and you have basically the developer tool, which again, if you're in our newsletter, you'll get an email with all the tools we think you should have to be able to run with your browser to develop in the best way. But I'm assuming that you have this tool already. If you click on your developer tool and click on disable and search for JavaScript and just disable all JavaScript, and click on refresh, you'll see that this time around we will be able to see that message, which was great because then we could basically tell people and we could test to see if it works whenever our JavaScript is disabled. Now, one thing that I wanted to say, one more thing that I wanted to say was in general that if you have a site, you always want to test it out with your JavaScript disabled and your CSS disabled, not for visibility, but for the flow, to make sure that everything still works, because a lot of the search engine robots ignore JavaScript, or most of the time ignore JavaScript. So if your site doesn't work without any JavaScript at all, you will get less results from search engines in general. So you just want to make sure that your site works without JavaScript as well. All right, it doesn't have to work great, but it has to work. So search engines could search through your site and go through the content of your site without getting lost, without getting stuck. Okay, so that's it. That is lesson 5. Hope you enjoyed it.